Sarah bumped into a stranger at the coffee shop, their hands brushing for just a second. But when she looked into his eyes, something impossible happened. She saw flashes of memories that weren't hers. Memories of him waiting, searching, calling her name in empty rooms for years. What she did next shocked everyone. Before we begin, write in the comments what city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy watching.
Sarah's alarm screamed at 6:30 in the morning. She rolled over, groaning, and slapped the snooze button harder than necessary. Her tiny apartment in downtown London felt cramped and cold, but it was all she could afford on her graphic designer salary. "Come on, Sarah, you've got this," she mumbled to herself, stumbling toward the bathroom. 20 minutes later, she was rushing down the street, her long brown hair still damp from the shower. Her phone buzzed with a text from her boss about the morning client meeting. Sarah picked up her pace, her heels clicking against the pavement. The coffee shop on the corner was packed, as usual. Sarah squeezed through the crowd, checking her watch. She had exactly 8 minutes to get her coffee and make it to the office. "1 large coffee, 2 sugars, extra shot," she called to the barista, digging through her purse for her wallet. The line moved slowly. Sarah tapped her foot, watching the minutes tick by on her phone. When she finally reached the counter, she grabbed her coffee and spun around quickly. Too quickly. She crashed straight into someone behind her. Hot coffee splashed everywhere, on her white blouse, on the floor, and all over the man she'd just collided with. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," Sarah gasped, looking up at the stranger. The words died in her throat. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair and the most intense gray eyes she'd ever seen. His black suit looked expensive, the kind that cost more than her monthly rent. But it wasn't his looks that made her freeze. It was the way he was staring at her, like he knew her, like he'd been waiting for her. Their eyes locked, and suddenly Sarah's world tilted. Images flashed through her mind, memories that couldn't be hers. A man calling her name in an empty mansion, hands reaching for her across a crowded room, gray eyes filled with longing, searching faces in crowds, year after year. Sarah stumbled backward, her heart pounding. I don't... "Sarah?" the man whispered. She froze. Her blood turned to ice. She hadn't told him her name. She hadn't even spoken to him before this moment. "How do you know my name?" she breathed. The man stepped closer, ignoring the coffee stains on his expensive suit. His eyes never left her face. There was something desperate in his expression, like he was afraid she might disappear. "I've been looking for you," he said quietly. Sarah's hands started shaking. The empty coffee cup fell from her grip, clattering to the floor. More flashes hit her, the same gray eyes in candlelight, in moonlight, filled with tears as someone called her name over and over. "This isn't possible," she whispered. But even as she said it, something deep inside her chest was pulling toward him, like a magnet, like coming home. The man reached out slowly, carefully, like he was approaching a scared animal. His fingers brushed her cheek, and Sarah gasped as another wave of impossible memories crashed over her. Dancing in a grand ballroom, lying in a hospital bed while someone held her hand, standing at a train station, watching him disappear into the crowd. "No," Sarah said, jerking away from his touch. "No, this is crazy. This isn't real." She turned and ran. Behind her, she heard him call out, but she didn't stop. She pushed through the coffee shop crowd and burst onto the street, her heart hammering against her ribs. Sarah ran 3 blocks before she finally stopped, gasping for air outside a bookstore. She pressed her back against the window, trying to catch her breath. What had just happened? She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and called Maya, her best friend since university. "Maya, I need you to meet me. Now. Sarah, what's wrong? You sound terrible. Just, can you meet me at our usual place, please? 20 minutes later, Sarah was sitting across from Maya in their favorite cafe, still shaking. Maya's dark curls bounced as she leaned forward, concern written all over her face. Okay, start from the beginning. What happened? Sarah took a deep breath. I bumped into this man at the coffee shop, and when we touched, Maya, I saw things. Memories that weren't mine. Maya raised an eyebrow. What kind of memories? Him calling my name, looking for me, and he knew my name, Maya, before I told him. He knew. Sarah, honey, Maya said gently, you've been working really hard lately. Maybe you're just stressed. This wasn't stress, Sarah said firmly. This was real. When I looked into his eyes, it was like I'd known him my whole life. Like I'd been waiting for him too. Maya reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. Okay, let's say this really happened. What did he look like? Sarah closed her eyes, and immediately the stranger's face appeared in her mind. Every detail was crystal clear. The sharp line of his jaw, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the exact shade of gray in his eyes. Tall, dark hair, gray eyes, expensive suit. He looked like... Sarah paused, searching for the right words. Like money, like power, but also like he was lost. And you've never seen him before? Never. But Maya, when he touched my face, I remembered things. Things that couldn't have happened to me. Maya bit her lip, clearly worried. Sorry, you know how crazy this sounds, right? I know, she whispered, but it felt more real than anything I've ever experienced. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Maya spoke up. Maybe you should go back to the coffee shop tomorrow. See if he shows up again. Sarah's stomach fluttered with nerves and something else. Anticipation. What if he does? Then maybe you'll get some answers. At night, Sarah lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. Those gray eyes filled with a longing that seemed to span lifetimes. She rolled over and grabbed her sketchbook from the nightstand. Without really thinking about it, she started drawing. Her pencil moved across the paper like it had a mind of its own, creating lines and shadows that formed a perfect portrait. When she finished, Sarah stared down at the drawing in shock. It was him. Every detail was exactly right, details she shouldn't have been able to remember so clearly from such a brief encounter. But somehow, she had captured not just his face, but the expression in his eyes, the desperate hope, the recognition, the love. Sarah set the sketchbook aside and pulled her covers up to her chin. Tomorrow, she would go back to the coffee shop. She had to know if what she'd felt was real. She had to know why a complete stranger felt like coming home.
Sarah arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early the next morning. She ordered the same drink and found a table near the window where she could watch everyone who came and went. Her hands wrapped around the warm cup as she waited. Every time the door opened, her heart jumped. But it was never him. After an hour, Sarah gave up and went to work, but she couldn't concentrate. During her lunch break, she returned to the coffee shop. Again, nothing. This went on for 3 days. On the 4th day, Maya showed up at the coffee shop and slid into the seat across from Sarah. Okay, this is getting ridiculous, Maya announced. You've been coming here every day and you look terrible. You're not sleeping, are you? Sarah shook her head. The dreams, Maya. Every night, it's the same thing. I see him calling for me, but I can never reach him. Maya pulled out her phone. Right. I'm going to help you figure this out. What did you say his name was? I didn't. He never told me his name. Then we'll have to be creative. Maya started typing on her phone. Expensive suit, gray eyes, dark hair. Let's see what we can find. Sarah watched nervously as Maya scrolled through her phone. Wait, Maya said suddenly. Look at this. She turned her phone around, showing Sarah a photo from a business magazine. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It was him. Alexander Kane, Maya read aloud, CEO of Kane Technologies. Net worth, bloody hell, Sarah. This guy's worth millions. Sarah stared at the photo. Even in the professional headshot, his eyes held that same intense quality that had made her feel like he could see straight through to her soul. Kane Technologies, Sarah repeated. I've heard of them. They make security software. Maya kept scrolling. Look at this. He's only 32, but he's been running the company since he was 25. His grandfather founded it. Then his father ran it until he died. Maya paused. Sarah, this is interesting. Look at all these photos. She showed Sarah image after image from business events, charity galas, and company functions. In every single photo, Alexander Kane was alone. No dates, no girlfriends, no women at all except for business associates. That's odd, Sarah murmured. A rich, handsome CEO with no personal life? Maybe he's gay, Maya suggested. No, Sarah said immediately, then blushed when Maya gave her a look. I mean, I don't know. When he looked at me, it was different. Maya continued her search. Here's his company address, and look, there's a photo of him leaving this building last week. She showed Sarah a paparazzi-style photo of Alexander walking out of a sleek glass building in central London. He was wearing the same kind of expensive suit, but his expression looked tired, lonely. Sarah said slowly, what if I tried to find him? Are you insane? You can't just show up at a millionaire's office. Why not? He said he'd been looking for me. Maya stared at her. Sarah, listen to yourself. You met this man for 30 seconds, and now you're talking about stalking him. It's not stalking, it's following up. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep again. She kept thinking about Alexander's face in that paparazzi photo. He'd looked so alone. Around midnight, her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? She answered cautiously. Sarah. Her heart stopped. It was his voice. How did you get this number? She whispered. I need to see you, Alexander said. His voice sounded rough, like he hadn't slept either. Please. How did you find me? Can I come up? I'm outside your building. Sarah dropped the phone and ran to her window. 4 stories below, a black car was parked on the street. She could see a figure leaning against it. She picked up the phone again. How do you know where I live? I'll explain everything. Please, Sarah, just give me 5 minutes. Against every rational thought in her head, she buzzed him up. 3 minutes later, there was a soft knock on her door. Sarah opened it to find Alexander Kane standing in her hallway, looking completely out of place in his expensive clothes. Thank you, he said quietly. Sarah stepped back to let him in. Her tiny apartment looked even smaller with him in it. He was so tall that he had to duck slightly under the light fixture. Sit down, Sarah said, gesturing to her small sofa, and start talking. Alexander sat on the edge of the sofa, his hands clasped in front of him. I know how this looks. I know how crazy it sounds. Try me. He looked up at her, and Sarah saw that same desperate longing in his eyes. I've been dreaming about you for 7 years. Sarah's legs gave out. She sank into the chair across from him. Every night, the same dreams, you calling my name, me searching for you, and when I woke up, I could never remember your face clearly enough to find you. Until yesterday, Sarah whispered. Until yesterday. He leaned forward. Sarah, when you touched me, when our eyes met, it was like everything I'd been missing just clicked into place. Sarah's hands were shaking again. This is impossible. I know, but it's happening. They stared at each other across the small space. The air between them felt electric, charged with something Sarah couldn't name. I hired investigators, Alexander said suddenly. For 3 years, I paid people to help me find the woman from my dreams. But I could never describe you well enough. Sarah, Sarah said, testing his name on her tongue. It felt familiar. I've been having dreams too, since yesterday. I see you looking for me. He closed his eyes, relief washing over his face. You feel it too. I don't understand what it is. Alexander opened his eyes and looked directly at her. Neither do I. But I know that I've been waiting my whole life for yesterday to happen.
Sarah stared at Alexander, her mind racing. Show me. What? You said you'd been dreaming about me for 7 years. Show me proof. Alexander pulled out his phone and scrolled through it for a moment. Then he handed it to her. On the screen was a painting. A woman with long brown hair and dark eyes, wearing a flowing white dress. The woman looked exactly like Sarah. I painted this 3 years ago, Alexander said quietly, from memory after a particularly vivid dream. Sarah's hands trembled as she scrolled through more images. Painting after painting, all of the same woman, all of her. How is this possible? She whispered. I don't know, but there's more. Alexander stood up. I want to show you something. Will you come with me? Every logical part of Sarah's brain screamed that this was insane. She was about to get in a car with a man she'd met yesterday, who claimed he'd been dreaming about her for years. But when she looked into his gray eyes, all her fears quieted. Okay, she said. 20 minutes later, they were driving through the wealthy part of London in Alexander's sleek black car. Sarah sat in the passenger seat, stealing glances at him as he drove. Tell me about yourself, your life, your family. There's not much to tell. I'm a graphic designer. I live alone. My parents died in a car accident when I was 18. Sarah paused. What about you? Same story, actually. Lost my parents young. Been alone ever since. They pulled through a set of iron gates and up a long driveway. Sarah gasped when she saw the house. It was a mansion. Not just big, grand. 3 stories of honey-colored stone with tall windows and ivy climbing the walls. You live here alone? Sarah asked. Yes. It's been in my family for generations. They parked in front of the main entrance. Alexander came around to open Sarah's door, and when he offered her his hand to help her out, she hesitated for just a moment before taking it. The moment their skin touched, another flash hit her. Standing in front of this same house, but it looked different, older. A woman in an old-fashioned dress was walking up these same steps. Sarah? Alexander's voice brought her back to the present. Are you all right? Yes, just felt dizzy for a second. But as they walked toward the front door, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been here before. The inside of the house was even more impressive than the outside. High ceilings, elegant furniture, and paintings that looked like they belonged in a museum. "This way," Alexander said, leading her up a grand staircase. They walked down a long hallway lined with portraits. Sarah glanced at them as they passed, noting that all the men in the paintings had the same gray eyes as Alexander. "My family," Alexander explained, noticing her looking. "The Kane men all look pretty similar." He stopped in front of a door at the end of the hall. "Sarah, before I show you this, I need you to know that I'm not crazy. Or if I am, then I've been crazy for a very long time. Just show me." Alexander opened the door. Sarah stepped inside and gasped. The room was full of paintings, dozens of them, all propped against the walls or hanging from easels, and every single one was of her. Some showed her in modern clothes, others in historical dress. Some were just her face, others showed her in different settings, but it was definitely her in every painting. "I painted these over the past 7 years," Alexander said softly. "Every time I had a dream about you, I tried to capture what I saw." Sarah's hands trembled as she scrolled through more images, painting after painting, all of her. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "I don't know, but there's more." He led her to an easel in the corner. The painting showed a coffee shop and a woman with brown hair spilling coffee on a man in a black suit. "This I painted last week, before I met you." Sarah sank into a nearby chair. "This is impossible." "I hired private investigators. I gave them these paintings and asked them to find you. But they said it was hopeless. They said you could be anyone, anywhere in the world." "But I was here. I've lived in London my whole life." "I know that now, but London has 8 million people, and I only saw you in my dreams." Sarah looked up at him. "Why didn't you go to the coffee shop before, if you painted that scene?" "I did. I went there every day for a month, but the dream never told me when you'd be there." They stood in silence, surrounded by dozens of images of Sarah's face. "Alexander, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest." "Anything." "Do you think we've met before? I mean, before yesterday?" Alexander was quiet for a long moment. "Not in this lifetime." The words sent a chill down Sarah's spine. "What does that mean?" "I don't know. But, Sarah, when I touch you, when I look into your eyes, it doesn't feel like meeting someone new. It feels like finding someone I've lost." Sarah stood up and walked to one of the paintings. It showed her in a wedding dress, smiling radiantly at someone outside the frame. "I want to understand this," she said quietly. "Whatever this is, whatever's happening between us, I want to understand it." Alexander moved to stand beside her. "So do I." "Then help me. Show me everything, tell me everything, because right now I feel like I'm going crazy." Alexander reached out slowly and took her hand. This time, Sarah didn't pull away. "There's more," he said. "Much more. But Sarah, if I show you everything, if you see all of it, there's no going back. Your life will never be the same." Sarah looked into his gray eyes, and for a moment, she could swear she saw centuries of longing in there. "It's already not the same," she whispered. "It hasn't been the same since the moment I touched you."
Alexander led Sarah deeper into the mansion, down hallways that seemed to stretch forever. As they walked, Sarah noticed something strange. The house felt familiar. not just familiar, but like home. This wing is older, Alexander explained, as they entered a different section of the house. Some of these rooms haven't been used in decades. They stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. Alexander pulled an old-fashioned key from his pocket. "This room has been locked since my grandfather died," he said. "I only found the key last week." He turned the lock and pushed the door open. The hinges creaked in protest. Inside was what looked like a study. Dark wood furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a massive desk covered in papers. But what caught Sarah's attention were the journals. Dozens of them, arranged chronologically on the shelves. "My grandfather kept detailed records," Alexander said, pulling down one of the journals. "I have been reading them since I found this room." He handed Sarah a journal dated 1962. She opened it to a random page and started reading aloud. "The dreams are getting stronger. I see her face more clearly now. Dark hair, dark eyes, a smile that could light up the world. I've hired another investigator, but how do you find someone who only exists in dreams?" Sarah looked up at Alexander. "Your grandfather had the same dreams?" "Keep reading." Sarah flipped through more pages. Entry after entry described dreams of a woman who looked exactly like her. The handwriting grew more desperate as the years went on. "I'm 45 years old, and I've never loved anyone but a woman I've never met. My friends think I'm mad. Perhaps I am. She called my name in last night's dream. I woke up reaching for her, but there was nothing but empty air. I've started painting again. It's the only way I can hold on to her face when I wake up." Sarah set down the journal with shaking hands. "Alexander, this is exactly what you told me. The same dreams, the same obsession." "Look at this one." Alexander handed her another journal, this one dated 1987. "My father's." She opened it and found more of the same. Page after page of dreams about a woman who looked like her. But this handwriting was different, younger. "3 generations," Sarah whispered. "3 generations of Cain men, all dreaming about the same woman. All dreaming about you." Alexander pulled down a much older journal, its leather cover cracked with age. "This one belonged to my great-grandfather. It goes back to 1923. Sarah opened the ancient book carefully. The ink was faded, but she could still make out the words. "Elizabeth died today." I held her hand as she passed, and with her last breath, she promised she would find me again. I don't understand what she meant, but I believe her. Somehow I believe her. Her heart stopped. "Elizabeth?" "Keep reading." "It's been 6 months since Elizabeth passed. I should be moving on, but I can't. Every night I dream of her, but she looks different somehow. Her hair is shorter, her clothes are strange. She keeps trying to tell me something, but I can never quite hear her." Sarah sank into a nearby chair. "Alexander, what was Elizabeth's last name?" Alexander was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. My great-grandfather never wrote it down. But Sarah, there are pictures." He went to the desk and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside were dozens of old photographs. The first one took Sarah's breath away. It was a wedding photo from the 1920s. A young man who looked exactly like Alexander stood beside a woman in a vintage wedding dress. The woman looked exactly like Sarah. "This is Elizabeth,"
Alexander said quietly. My great-grandfather's wife. Sarah stared at the photo, her hands trembling. The woman's face was hers, the same eyes, the same smile, even the same expression she made when she was happy. This isn't possible, she whispered. Look at this one. The next photo showed the same couple at what looked like a picnic. Elizabeth was laughing at something, her head thrown back in joy. It was exactly the way Sarah laughed. And this one, a photo of Elizabeth painting at an easel, her face serious with concentration. Sarah knew that expression. She made the same face when she was working on a design project. Alexander, Sarah said, her voice barely audible. She looks exactly like me. I know. But that's impossible. People don't look exactly like someone from 90 years ago. Alexander sat down across from her. Unless what? Unless you're the same person. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt like she couldn't breathe. You think I'm the reincarnation of your great-grandfather's wife? I think, Alexander said carefully, that the Cain men are cursed to love the same woman across multiple lifetimes, and I think you're that woman. Sarah stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the wooden floor. That's insane! Is it? How else do you explain the dreams, the paintings, the way we recognized each other instantly? Coincidence! A very, very strange coincidence. Alexander pulled out more photos. This is Elizabeth at age 25. The woman looked exactly like...
Walls come down. Alexander's office was on the top floor of a gleaming skyscraper, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over London. But Sarah barely noticed the view. All she could see was Alexander. I can't believe you're here, he said, still holding her hands like she might disappear if he let go. I can't believe any of this is real, Sarah replied. But it is, isn't it? All of it? All of it. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Sarah could feel the pull between them, stronger now that she understood what it was. Alexander, she said quietly, I need to know something. Anything. In all those lives, in all those dreams your family had, did we ever get it right? Did we ever actually get to be together? Alexander's face fell. Elizabeth and my great-grandfather had 2 years. That's the longest any version of us has ever had. 2 years, Sarah repeated. And then she died. Yes. What if... Sarah swallowed hard. What if that's all we get? What if I'm destined to die young, like she did? Alexander stepped closer to her. Then we make those years count. You'd risk it? Knowing you might lose me? Sarah, I've been losing you for over a century. At least this time, I get to hold you first. The words broke something open in Sarah's chest. Before she could think about it, she reached up and kissed him. The moment their lips touched, the world exploded. Memories flooded through both of them. Not just Elizabeth's memories, but all of them. Every kiss, every touch, every moment of love across all their lifetimes came rushing back in a tidal wave of emotion. Sarah gasped against Alexander's mouth as images flashed through her mind. Dancing with him in a medieval castle, kissing him goodbye at a train station, lying in his arms while rain pattered against windows, promising to love him forever, again and again and again. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. Did you feel that? Sarah whispered. All of it, Alexander said, his voice rough. Every memory, every life, every time I loved you. Sarah touched his face gently. How did we survive being apart for so long? We didn't. We just existed until we could find each other again. Behind them, someone cleared their throat. Sarah spun around to see a woman in a business suit standing in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Kane," the woman said, looking embarrassed, "but your 3 o'clock appointment is here." Alexander didn't take his eyes off Sarah. "Cancel it. Cancel everything for the rest of the day." "Sir?" "Everything, Janet, and hold all my calls." The woman nodded and disappeared, closing the door behind her. Alexander turned back to Sarah. "Come with me." "Where?" "Home. I want to show you something." They took Alexander's car back to the mansion. During the drive, Sarah found herself studying his profile, marveling at how familiar he looked. She'd been looking at that face for lifetimes. "Alexander," she said as they pulled through the mansion gates, "can I ask you something personal?" "Everything about this is personal." "You're 32 years old, and you've never been with anyone else?" Alexander parked the car and turned to look at her. "How could I be? Every woman I've ever met felt wrong, like I was trying to fit the wrong piece into a puzzle. That must have been lonely." "It was. But Sarah, I knew you were coming. My grandfather left letters, told me that someday I'd find you. So I waited." They went inside the mansion, and Alexander led her up the stairs again. But this time, instead of going to the room full of paintings, he took her to a different door. "This is my bedroom," he said, then quickly added, I just want to show you something." The bedroom was large and elegant, with a massive 4-poster bed and windows that looked out over the gardens. But what caught Sarah's attention was the painting above the fireplace. It was her, as Elizabeth, wearing a wedding dress, smiling radiantly. "My great-grandfather painted that," Alexander said. "It's hung in this room for 90 years. Sarah stared at the painting. "You've been sleeping under a picture of me for your entire life? My father did too, and his father before him. It's like you were watching over us, waiting to come back." Sarah walked closer to the painting. Elizabeth looked so happy, so full of life. It was hard to believe that woman had died just a few years later. "Alexander," she said, turning back to him, "I want to try this. I want to try being together, really together." "Are you sure?" "I'm terrified," Sarah admitted, "but I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been." Alexander crossed the room to her in 3 quick strides. "What does that mean? What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to explore this connection. I want to see what it's like to be with you without fear, without running away." "Sarah, do you understand what you're asking? If we do this, if we really let ourselves fall into this, there's no going back." "I know." Alexander cupped her face in his hands. "I need you to be sure, because I've been in love with you for 7 years, and if you change your mind, I won't change my mind." "How can you be certain?" Sarah smiled, feeling more sure of herself than she'd ever felt about anything. "Because I've been in love with you for multiple lifetimes. I think I can handle one more." Alexander kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. Sarah felt herself melting into him, like she was finally where she belonged. When they broke apart, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Stay here with me. Not just tonight, but really stay. Move in. Let me take care of you." "Alexander, we've known each other for a week. We've known each other for centuries." Sarah looked around the elegant bedroom, then back at Alexander's hopeful face. "Okay," she said, "but I have conditions. Anything. I keep my job. I'm not going to be some kept woman sitting around your mansion all day. Of course. And I want to understand this connection we have. I want to explore it, learn about it. Can you really feel my emotions?" Alexander nodded. "When you're close to me, yes. And I think you can feel mine too." "What do you mean?" "Close your eyes," Alexander said. "Tell me what I'm feeling right now." Sarah closed her eyes and concentrated. Immediately, she was flooded with emotion, overwhelming love, desperate relief, and underneath it all, a fear so deep it made her chest ache. "You're afraid," she said, opening her eyes. "You're afraid I'll leave again." "I'm terrified," Alexander admitted. "Every time you walk away, I feel like I'm losing you forever." "And I can feel that," Sarah said wonderingly. "I can actually feel your fear. We're connected, Sarah, on a level that most people can't even imagine."
Sarah reached out and took his hand. The moment their skin touched, she felt his relief like a warm wave washing over her. "This is going to take some getting used to," she said. "We have time." "Do we? What if Elizabeth's pattern repeats? What if I die young?" Alexander's grip on her hand tightened. "That's not going to happen." "How can you be sure?" "Because this time is different. This time we found each other early enough. This time I can protect you." Sarah looked into his gray eyes and saw the fierce determination there. He really believed he could keep her safe through sheer force of will. "Alexander," she said gently, "you can't control everything. I can try." Sarah smiled and kissed him softly. "Then let's try together."
The next morning, Sarah called in sick to work and spent the day researching past life regression therapists in London. Most of them sounded like charlatans, but one had legitimate credentials. Dr. Helen Morrison, a psychiatrist who specialized in hypnotherapy. Sarah called and managed to get an appointment for that afternoon. Dr. Morrison's office was nothing like Sarah had expected. Instead of crystals and incense, it looked like a normal doctor's office, professional, clean, with medical degrees on the wall. "I have to admit," Dr. Morrison said, after Sarah explained what she wanted, "past life regression is controversial. Many of my colleagues don't believe in it at all." "But you do?" "I believe the mind is capable of accessing memories in ways we don't fully understand. Whether those memories belong to past lives or are created by the subconscious, I can't say. But I can help you explore what your mind is trying to tell you." Sarah settled into a comfortable chair as Dr. Morrison dimmed the lights. "I want you to close your eyes and focus on your breathing," Dr. Morrison said in a soothing voice. "Let yourself relax completely." Sarah felt herself sinking deeper into the chair as Dr. Morrison guided her through a series of relaxation exercises. "Now," Dr. Morrison said, "I want you to imagine yourself walking down a long hallway. At the end of the hallway is a door. When you're ready, I want you to open that door and step through." In her mind, Sarah approached the door. It was old and wooden, with a heavy brass handle. She opened it and stepped through. Immediately, the world changed around her. She was standing in a grand ballroom wearing a beaded dress that sparkled in the chandelier light. The music was different, jazz from the 1920s. Couples were dancing all around her. "What do you see?" Dr. Morrison's voice seemed to come from far away. "A party," Sarah heard herself say. "Everyone's dressed like it's the 1920s. Look down at yourself. What are you wearing?" Sarah looked down and gasped. She was wearing a gold-beaded dress with a drop waist and T-bar shoes. Her hair was shorter, styled in finger waves. "A gold dress. My hair is different." "What's your name?" "Elizabeth." The name came out automatically. "Elizabeth Kane." "How old are you?" 26. "It's my birthday party." "Look around. Do you see anyone you recognize?" Sarah turned and her heart leaped. Alexander was there, but he looked younger. His hair was styled differently, slicked back like men wore it in the 1920s. He was wearing a tuxedo and walking toward her with a huge smile. "Alexander," she whispered. "Who is Alexander to you?" "My husband. We've been married for 2 years." In the vision, Alexander reached her and spun her around in his arms. "Happy birthday, darling," he said, and his voice was exactly the same as it was now. "I love you," Elizabeth Sarah heard herself say. The scene shifted suddenly. Now she was lying in a bed, feeling weak and tired. Alexander was sitting beside her, holding her hand. He looked older now, and there were tears in his eyes. "Don't leave me," he was begging. "Please, Elizabeth, fight this." "I can't." Elizabeth Sarah heard herself whisper. "I'm too tired." "Then promise me you'll come back. Promise me you'll find me again." "I promise. I'll always find you." The scene faded to black. "What's happening now?" Dr. Morrison asked. "I'm dying," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm leaving him, but I don't want to." "Go forward. What happens next?" The darkness lifted, and Sarah found herself in a different place entirely. She was standing in what looked like a train station, but it was old-fashioned, Victorian era. She looked down at herself and saw a different dress, a different time period. "I'm someone else now," Sarah said. "Different clothes, different time." "What's your name?" "Isabella. Isabella something with an M. Montford?" "No, Marlowe. Isabella Marlowe." "What year is it?" 1887. In this vision, Sarah was dressed in a bustle skirt and fitted jacket. Her hair was long and elaborate, pinned up with decorative combs. "I'm waiting for someone," Sarah continued. "I'm supposed to meet someone here, but my father forbids it." "Who are you waiting for?" "Alexander. He wants to marry me, but father says he's not suitable. Father wants me to marry someone else." In the vision, Alexander appeared through the crowd. He looked the same, but different. Same gray eyes, same face, but with Victorian-era clothing and longer hair. "Isabella," he called, pushing through the people. But before he could reach her, other figures appeared, Sarah's father and several men in uniforms. "You cannot see him again," her father said sternly. "I've arranged your passage to America. You'll marry Mr. Henderson as planned." "No!" Isabella cried, reaching for Alexander. "I love him." "Love is a luxury we cannot afford," her father replied. The men forced Isabella onto a train, and through the window, Sarah could see Alexander running alongside, shouting her name. The scene changed again. Now Sarah was older, wearing black Victorian mourning dress. "I'm at a funeral," Sarah said. "My husband's funeral. Mr. Henderson died, and I never loved him. I spent my whole life thinking about Alexander." "What happens to you?" "I die alone. Old and alone, still thinking about him." The Victorian scene faded, and Sarah found herself in yet another time and place. "I'm in a different life again," she reported to Dr. Morrison. "It's medieval? I'm wearing rough clothes, living in a small village." "What's your name?" "Catherine. I'm a baker's daughter." In this vision, Sarah was kneading bread when Alexander appeared at the shop door. He was dressed as a nobleman, with fine clothes that marked him this far above her station. "I see Alexander again, but he's a lord, and I'm just a peasant. We can't be together because of our different classes." The pattern continued. Life after life, Sarah saw herself and Alexander finding each other, falling in love, and being separated by circumstances beyond their control. A woman named Anne in the 1600s who died of plague before she could marry Alexander. A girl named Rose in the early 1800s whose family moved to Australia to escape debt, leaving Alexander behind. Always the same love, always the same separation. "Bring yourself back to the present," Dr. Morrison said gently. "Come back to this room, this time." Sarah opened her eyes, gasping. She was back in the therapist's office, but she felt like she'd lived several lifetimes in the past hour. "How do you feel?" Dr. Morrison asked. "Like I understand everything now," Sarah whispered. "Dr. Morrison, were those real memories?" "I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that your subconscious has created a very detailed and consistent narrative about your relationship with this Alexander." Sarah sat up, her mind racing.
In every life we found each other. In every life we loved each other. But in every life something kept us apart. And how does that make you feel? Like maybe this time is different. This time there's nothing keeping us apart except my own fear. Sarah left Dr. Morrison's office feeling like she'd been turned inside out. Whether the visions were real memories or elaborate fantasies created by her subconscious, they felt true. They felt like the missing pieces of her soul. She took a taxi straight to Alexander's office building. The receptionist in the lobby looked surprised when Sarah asked to see Alexander Kane without an appointment. "I'm sorry, but Mr. Kane doesn't see anyone without—" "Tell him Sarah is here. Tell him I remember." 5 minutes later, Sarah was in the elevator, riding up to the top floor. Alexander was waiting for her when the elevator doors opened. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Sarah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I remember," she said simply. "Elizabeth, Isabella, Catherine, Anne, Rose. I remember all of them." Alexander's face crumpled with relief. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. "I knew you would," he whispered against her hair. "I knew you'd remember." Standing there in his arms, Sarah felt complete for the first time in her life, like all the missing pieces of herself had finally clicked into place. "Alexander," she said, pulling.
Walls come down. Alexander's office was on the top floor of a gleaming skyscraper, with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over London. But Sarah barely noticed the view. All she could see was Alexander. "I can't believe you're here," he said, still holding her hands like she might disappear if he let go. "I can't believe any of this is real," Sarah replied. "But it is, isn't it? All of it? All of it." They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. Sarah could feel the pull between them, stronger now that she understood what it was. "Alexander," she said quietly, "I need to know something. Anything. In all those lives, in all those dreams your family had, did we ever get it right? Did we ever actually get to be together?" Alexander's face fell. "Elizabeth and my great-grandfather had 2 years. That's the longest any version of us has ever had." 2 years, Sarah repeated. "And then she died." "Yes. What if—" Sarah swallowed hard. "What if that's all we get? What if I'm destined to die young, like she did?" Alexander stepped closer to her. "Then we make those years count. You'd risk it? Knowing you might lose me? Sarah, I've been losing you for over a century. At least this time, I get to hold you first." The words broke something open in Sarah's chest. Before she could think about it, she reached up and kissed him. The moment their lips touched, the world exploded. Memories flooded through both of them. Not just Elizabeth's memories, but all of them. Every kiss, every touch, every moment of love across all their lifetimes came rushing back in a tidal wave of emotion. Sarah gasped against Alexander's mouth as images flashed through her mind. Dancing with him in a medieval castle, kissing him goodbye at a train station, lying in his arms while rain pattered against windows, promising to love him forever, again and again and again. When they finally broke apart, both of them were shaking. "Did you feel that?" Sarah whispered. "All of it," Alexander said, his voice rough. "Every memory, every life, every time I loved you." Sarah touched his face gently. "How did we survive being apart for so long?" "We didn't. We just existed until we could find each other again." Behind them, someone cleared their throat. Sarah spun around to see a woman in a business suit standing in the doorway. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Kane," the woman said, looking embarrassed, "but your 3 o'clock appointment is here." Alexander didn't take his eyes off Sarah. "Cancel it. Cancel everything for the rest of the day." "Sir?" "Everything, Janet, and hold all my calls." The woman nodded and disappeared, closing the door behind her. Alexander turned back to Sarah. "Come with me." "Where?" "Home. I want to show you something."
They took Alexander's car back to the mansion. During the drive, Sarah found herself studying his profile, marveling at how familiar he looked. She'd been looking at that face for lifetimes. "Alexander," she said as they pulled through the mansion gates, "can I ask you something personal? Everything about this is personal. You're 32 years old, and you've never been with anyone else?" Alexander parked the car and turned to look at her. "How could I be? Every woman I've ever met felt wrong, like I was trying to fit the wrong piece into a puzzle. That must have been lonely." "It was. But Sarah, I knew you were coming. My grandfather left letters, told me that someday I'd find you. So I waited." They went inside the mansion, and Alexander led her up the stairs again. But this time, instead of going to the room full of paintings, he took her to a different door. "This is my bedroom," he said, then quickly added, I just want to show you something." The bedroom was large and elegant, with a massive four-poster bed and windows that looked out over the gardens. But what caught Sarah's attention was the painting above the fireplace. It was her, as Elizabeth, wearing a wedding dress, smiling radiantly. "My great-grandfather painted that," Alexander said. "It's hung in this room for 90 years. Sarah stared at the painting. "You've been sleeping under a picture of me for your entire life? My father did too, and his father before him. It's like you were watching over us, waiting to come back." Sarah walked closer to the painting. Elizabeth looked so happy, so full of life. It was hard to believe that woman had died just a few years later. "Alexander," she said, turning back to him, "I want to try this. I want to try being together, really together." "Are you sure?" "I'm terrified," Sarah admitted, "but I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been." Alexander crossed the room to her in 3 quick strides. "What does that mean? What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to explore this connection. I want to see what it's like to be with you without fear, without running away." "Sarah, do you understand what you're asking? If we do this, if we really let ourselves fall into this, there's no going back." "I know." Alexander cupped her face in his hands. "I need you to be sure, because I've been in love with you for 7 years, and if you change your mind, I won't change my mind." "How can you be certain?" Sarah smiled, feeling more sure of herself than she'd ever felt about anything. "Because I've been in love with you for multiple lifetimes. I think I can handle one more." Alexander kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. Sarah felt herself melting into him, like she was finally where she belonged. When they broke apart, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Stay here with me. Not just tonight, but really stay. Move in. Let me take care of you." "Alexander, we've known each other for a week. We've known each other for centuries." Sarah looked around the elegant bedroom, then back at Alexander's hopeful face. "Okay," she said, "but I have conditions. Anything. I keep my job. I'm not going to be some kept woman sitting around your mansion all day. Of course. And I want to understand this connection we have. I want to explore it, learn about it. Can you really feel my emotions?" Alexander nodded. "When you're close to me, yes. And I think you can feel mine too." "What do you mean?" "Close your eyes," Alexander said. "Tell me what I'm feeling right now." Sarah closed her eyes and concentrated. Immediately, she was flooded with emotion, overwhelming love, desperate relief, and underneath it all, a fear so deep it made her chest ache. "You're afraid," she said, opening her eyes. "You're afraid I'll leave again." "I'm terrified," Alexander admitted. "Every time you walk away, I feel like I'm losing you forever." "And I can feel that," Sarah said wonderingly. "I can actually feel your fear. We're connected, Sarah, on a level that most people can't even imagine." Sarah reached out and took his hand. The moment their skin touched, she felt his relief like a warm wave washing over her. "This is going to take some getting used to," she said. "We have time." "Do we? What if Elizabeth's pattern repeats? What if I die young?" Alexander's grip on her hand tightened. "That's not going to happen." "How can you be sure?" "Because this time is different. This time we found each other early enough. This time I can protect you." Sarah looked into his gray eyes and saw the fierce determination there. He really believed he could keep her safe through sheer force of will. "Alexander," she said gently, "you can't control everything. I can try." Sarah smiled and kissed him softly. "Then let's try together."
Love and fear. 3 weeks later, Sarah was living in the mansion and discovering what it meant to love someone with a supernatural connection. It was like being inside a fairy tale. Alexander spoiled her in ways she'd never imagined. Fresh flowers in every room, her favorite coffee waiting for her each morning, a car and driver to take her to work whenever she wanted. But more than the material things, it was the emotional connection that took her breath away. When Alexander was happy, Sarah felt it like sunshine in her chest. When he was worried about a business deal, she felt the tension in her own shoulders. And when he looked at her with complete adoration, she felt beautiful in a way that went deeper than physical appearance. The problem was that the connection worked both ways. Sarah was sitting in the mansion's library one evening, working on a design project, when she felt a sudden spike of panic that wasn't her own. "Alexander?" she called. He appeared in the doorway within seconds, his face pale. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. You're the one who's panicking." Alexander ran a hand through his hair. "You were so quiet. You've been quiet for an hour, and I started thinking, what if something was wrong? What if you were getting sick?" Sarah set down her laptop and really looked at him. "Alexander, when was the last time you left this house without me?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, since I moved in, have you gone anywhere alone?" Alexander was quiet for a moment. "I went to the office yesterday while you were at work." "For how long?" "A few hours." And I couldn't concentrate. I kept feeling like something terrible was going to happen to you." Sarah stood up and crossed to him. "Alexander, you're driving yourself crazy." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. You're so terrified of losing me that you're not actually living." Alexander pulled her close. "What if something happens to you when I'm not here?" "Like what?" "I don't know. An accident, an illness, anything." Sarah felt his fear through their connection, and it was overwhelming. This wasn't normal worry. This was the terror of someone who'd lost everything before. "Alexander," she said gently, "you can't protect me from everything." "I can try. But at what cost? You're making yourself sick with worry." "I'm fine." "No, you're not. You're so terrified of losing me that you're not actually living." Alexander pulled her close. "What if something happens to you when I'm not here?" "Like what?" "I don't know. An accident, an illness, anything." Sarah felt his fear through their connection, and it was overwhelming. This wasn't normal worry. This was the terror of someone who'd lost everything before. "Alexander," she said gently, "you can't protect me from everything." "I can try. But at what cost? You're making yourself sick with worry." "I'm fine." Alexander insisted, but Sarah could feel his anxiety radiating through their bond. That night, Sarah woke up to find Alexander's side of the bed empty. She found him in his study, reading through old journals by lamplight. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Research, trying to understand what made Elizabeth get sick. If I can figure out what went wrong, maybe I can prevent it." Sarah looked at the books scattered across his desk, medical journals, historical records, anything that might explain tuberculosis in the 1920s. "Alexander, it's 3 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. Come back to bed." "In a minute. I just want to finish this article about—" "Now," Sarah said firmly. Alexander looked up at her, and Sarah saw the dark circles under his eyes. "Sarah, I need to understand. What you need is sleep. This obsession isn't healthy. It's not an obsession, it's precaution." Sarah sat on the edge of his desk. "Alexander, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you love me, or do you love the idea of not losing me?"
Alexander's face went pale. What kind of question is that? A fair one, because from where I'm sitting, it feels like you're so focused on keeping me alive that you're forgetting to actually live with me. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time we went on a date? When was the last time we talked about something other than my health or safety? Alexander was quiet. I want to live, Alexander, not just survive, but actually live. I want to go places with you, try new things, have adventures. What if something happens? Then something happens. Alexander, we could both die in a car accident tomorrow. We could both get food poisoning. The world is full of risks. But you're different. You're special. If I lose you... Sarah slid off the desk and knelt beside his chair. Look at me. Alexander turned to her. I'm not going anywhere, Sarah said firmly. I chose to be here with you. I chose this life, this love, this risk. You don't have to carry the weight of keeping me safe all by yourself. But what if I fail? What if I can't protect you? Then we'll face whatever comes together. But Alexander, if you don't stop treating me like I'm made of glass, you're going to drive us both crazy. Alexander reached out and touched her face. I just love you so much. The thought of losing you again? I know. I can feel how much you love me. But love isn't supposed to be about control or fear. It's supposed to be about trust. Do you trust me? Completely. Do you trust me? Alexander hesitated. I trust you. I just don't trust the universe. Sarah smiled. Then trust me to handle the universe. They went back to bed, and Alexander held her close while she fell asleep. But Sarah could feel his tension, the way his body stayed alert even as hers relaxed. The next morning, Sarah made a decision. I want to go somewhere, she announced over breakfast. Where? I don't care. Paris, Scotland, Brighton. Somewhere we can just be a normal couple for a few days. Alexander's grip tightened on his coffee cup. Sarah, I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? What if something happens when we're away from our doctors? Alexander, do you hear yourself? We're not 80 years old. We're young and healthy. Elizabeth was young and healthy too. Sarah set down her fork. Elizabeth lived in 1920. She didn't have modern medicine, antibiotics, or any of the medical advances we have now. But, no buts. Alexander, I need you to understand something. I would rather have 1 year of really living with you than 50 years of hiding in this mansion. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. What if I can't do it? What if I can't stop worrying? Then we'll work on it together. But Alexander, the way we're living now, it's not sustainable. What do you mean? Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. I mean that love isn't supposed to feel like a prison. And right now, your fear is building walls around us. Alexander squeezed her hand. I don't want to lose you. You're not going to lose me. But Alexander, you might lose us if you don't find a way to let go of some of this fear. That afternoon, Alexander surprised Sarah by booking them a weekend trip to Paris. Just 2 days, he said nervously, and I'm bringing the names of several good hospitals, just in case. Sarah kissed him. It's a start. But even as she celebrated this small victory, Sarah could feel Alexander's anxiety through their connection. The fear was always there, humming in the background like a constant warning. She loved him more than she'd ever loved anyone, in this lifetime or any other. But she was beginning to understand that sometimes love wasn't enough. Sometimes you had to choose between love and fear. And Sarah was determined to choose love.
The choice. The Paris trip was supposed to be romantic, and in many ways it was. Alexander had booked them a beautiful hotel room overlooking the Seine, and they spent their days wandering through museums and cafes like any other couple in love. But Sarah could feel Alexander's constant vigilance. He checked on her every few minutes, insisted on taking taxis instead of walking, and made her promise to tell him immediately if she felt even slightly unwell. By their second day, Sarah was exhausted by his anxiety. "Alexander," she said as they sat in a sidewalk cafe, "you need to relax." "I am relaxed. You've checked your phone 6 times in the past 10 minutes. I was checking the weather. The weather app doesn't require refreshing every 2 minutes." Alexander set down his phone and tried to smile. "Sorry, I just want everything to be perfect." "It is perfect, but your anxiety is making me anxious." "I'm not anxious." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I can literally feel your emotions, remember?" Alexander sighed. "I know, I'm trying to control it." "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe instead of trying to control your fear, you should try to understand where it's coming from." "I know where it's coming from. I don't want to lose you." "But why are you so convinced you're going to lose me?" Alexander was quiet for a moment. "Because it always happens. In every lifetime, something goes wrong." "Alexander, those were different times, different circumstances. This is now." "But what if there's some cosmic rule? What if we're not meant to have happiness?" Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. "Then we make our own rules." They were walking back to their hotel when it happened. Sarah was laughing at something Alexander had said when she stepped off the curb without looking. The delivery truck came out of nowhere. Alexander shouted her name and lunged forward, but he was too far away. The impact sent Sarah flying. She hit the pavement hard, her head striking the concrete with a sickening crack. The world went dark. When Sarah opened her eyes, she wasn't in Paris anymore. She was standing in a place that seemed to exist outside of time. White light stretching endlessly in all directions, but somehow warm and welcoming rather than stark. "Where am I?" she said aloud. "You're between." Sarah turned to find a woman standing behind her. She looked familiar, though Sarah was certain they'd never met. Between what? Between life and death. Between staying and going. The woman smiled, and suddenly Sarah recognized her. It was Elizabeth, but somehow she could see all of Sarah's other past selves in her face too. Isabella, Catherine, Anne, Rose, all of them overlapping like double-exposed photographs. "You're me," Sarah breathed. "We're all you, all the versions of your soul that have loved Alexander across time. Am I dead? Not yet, but you're badly injured. You have a choice to make." Around them, the white space shimmered, and suddenly Sarah could see scenes playing out like movies in the air. In one, she saw Alexander kneeling beside her broken body on the Paris street, crying as paramedics worked to save her life. In another, she saw herself in a hospital bed, machines beeping around her, Alexander holding her hand while doctors spoke in low voices about brain damage and uncertain outcomes. "If I stay," Sarah said, "what happens?" "You recover, but slowly. You and Alexander have years together, but they're not easy years. Your injuries change you, and Alexander's fear becomes even stronger. And if I go?" Elizabeth gestured, and Sarah saw a different scene. Alexander at her funeral, destroyed by grief, but somehow finding peace in the knowledge that she was finally free from the cycle of loss. Sarah stared at the visions, her heart breaking. That's not much of a choice, isn't it? Stay and suffer, or go and leave Alexander alone forever? Elizabeth smiled sadly. "Oh, Sarah, you still don't understand." "Understand what?" "There's a third option, but it requires something you've never done before." "What?" "You have to choose love over fear. Completely, absolutely, without reservation." The space around them shifted, and Sarah saw more visions. But these were different. Scenes of her and Alexander together, truly happy. Traveling the world, growing old together, dying peacefully in each other's arms after decades of joy. How is that possible? Sarah whispered. The pattern isn't a curse, Sarah. It's a test. Every lifetime, you and Alexander have been given the chance to choose love over fear, but something always goes wrong. Sarah thought about Alexander's desperate attempts to protect her, his anxiety about losing her. He's so scared, she said. And you've been scared too. Scared of dying young. Scared of the connection between you. Scared of loving someone so completely. So what's the third option? Elizabeth stepped closer. Go back. But this time, choose differently. Trust the love completely. Stop trying to control what happens and just let yourself love and be loved without reservation. What if it doesn't work? What if I still die young? Then you die having lived fully. But Sarah, what if it does work? What if choosing love over fear is what breaks the cycle? Sarah looked at the visions of happiness, then at the scenes of Alexander crying over her broken body. If I go back, how do I convince Alexander to stop being afraid? You can't convince him. You can only show him by choosing love yourself. And if he can't do it, then at least one of you will have tried. Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the weight of centuries of love and loss. I want to go back, she said. I want to try the third option. Elizabeth smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like Sarah. I was hoping you'd say that. What do I do? Fight. Fight for every breath, every heartbeat. And when you wake up, love him without conditions, without fear, without trying to protect yourself from loss. The white space began to fade around them. Wait, Sarah called. Will I see you again? You won't need to, Elizabeth said, her voice already distant. This time, you're going to get it right. Sarah opened her eyes to the sound of machines beeping and Alexander's voice calling her name. She was in a hospital room, and Alexander was leaning over her, his face streaked with tears. Sarah, he breathed. Thank God. I thought, the doctor said... I'm here, she whispered, her voice rough. I chose to stay. Alexander's hand tightened on hers. I was so scared. I thought I'd lost you. Sarah looked into his gray eyes and saw all the fear there, all the desperate love, all the terror of loss. Alexander, she said, we need to talk.
Forever this time. Sarah spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from her concussion and broken ribs. Alexander never left her side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair next to her bed and refusing all offers from nurses to find him somewhere more comfortable to rest. On the morning she was released, Sarah made a decision. I want to get married, she announced as Alexander helped her into the car. Alexander nearly dropped her overnight bag. What? I want to marry you, soon, not because I'm afraid of dying, but because I'm no longer afraid of living. Sarah, you just had a serious accident. Maybe we should wait until... Until what? Until the fear comes back? Until we convince ourselves that we need to wait for the right time? Alexander started the car, but didn't put it in drive. Are you sure? This isn't just the medication talking? Sarah turned in her seat to face him fully. Alexander, when I was unconscious, I saw Elizabeth. I saw all of them, all the versions of me that loved you and lost you. What did they tell you? That we've been doing this wrong, all of us, for all these lifetimes. We've been letting fear control our love instead of letting love control our fear. Alexander was quiet for a moment. What does that mean? It means no more medical research into every little cough I have, no more refusing to travel because something might happen, no more living like we're waiting for disaster. But Sarah, no buts. Alexander, I nearly died 3 days ago, and do you know what I regret most? What? That we wasted 3 weeks of happiness worrying about losing each other instead of enjoying what we had. Alexander leaned back in his seat. So what are you saying? I'm saying, let's get married next weekend. Let's go on a honeymoon somewhere exotic and dangerous. Let's have babies and fight sometimes and make up and grow old together without constantly looking over our shoulders for disaster. But Sarah, no buts. Alexander, I nearly died 3 days ago, and do you know what I regret most? What? That we wasted 3 weeks of happiness worrying about losing each other instead of enjoying what we had. Alexander leaned back in his seat. So, what are you saying? I'm saying, let's get married next weekend. Let's go on a honeymoon somewhere exotic and dangerous. Let's have babies and fight sometimes and make up and grow old together without constantly looking over our shoulders for disaster. But what if something happens? Sarah smiled. Then we'll handle it together. But Alexander, I'd rather have 50 years of really living with you than 100 years of hiding from life. And if we only get 50 years, then we make them count. Alexander looked at her for a long moment, then leaned over and kissed her gently. Okay, he said, let's do it. Really? Really. But Sarah, I have one condition. What? I want to get married at the mansion, in the garden, where Elizabeth and my great-grandfather had their wedding. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. That's perfect. They were married the following Saturday in the mansion's rose garden, surrounded by white flowers and the people they loved. Maya was Sarah's maid of honor, despite still thinking the whole thing was slightly insane. You've known him for 6 weeks, she whispered as she helped Sarah into her wedding dress. I've known him for lifetimes, Sarah replied, and found that she completely believed it. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. When Alexander saw Sarah walking down the makeshift aisle in her grandmother's wedding dress, he started crying. You look exactly like her, he whispered when she reached him, like Elizabeth on our wedding day. I am her, Sarah whispered back, and I'm me, and I'm yours. When the minister asked if they took each other for better or worse, in sickness and in health, till death do them part, both Sarah and Alexander answered with absolute certainty, I do. But when they kissed as husband and wife, something extraordinary happened. The moment their lips touched, both of them were flooded with memories, not just from their past lives, but from their future. They saw themselves growing old together, saw children and grandchildren, saw decades of happiness stretching out before them. And underneath it all, they felt something shift in the universe, like a cosmic lock clicking open. Did you feel that? Sarah whispered against Alexander's lips. Everything, he breathed. I saw everything. That night, in the mansion's master bedroom, they made love for the first time without fear, without holding back, without trying to protect themselves from the possibility of loss. And as they lay tangled together afterward, Sarah felt something she'd never experienced before: complete peace. Alexander, she said, tracing patterns on his chest, I think we did it. Did what? Broke the cycle, chose love over fear. Alexander pulled her closer. How can you tell? Because I'm not afraid anymore. For the first time in any lifetime, I'm not afraid of losing you. What changed? Sarah propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. I realized that the fear of losing you was actually keeping me from having you. We were so busy trying to prevent tragedy that we were creating our own. And now? Now I know that whatever happens, we'll face it together, and that makes all the difference. 6 months later, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. When she told Alexander, he cried again, but this time they were tears of pure joy instead of fear. A baby, he said, wonderingly, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. Our baby. Are you scared? Sarah asked. Terrified, Alexander admitted, but also excited, grateful, ready. Good, because this little one is going to need parents who know how to choose love over fear. Their daughter was born on a rainy Tuesday in October, healthy and perfect and loud. They named her Elizabeth Rose, honoring all the women who had loved before them.
As Sarah held her baby for the first time, she felt Alexander's emotions through their bond. Overwhelming love, fierce protectiveness, but underneath it all, a deep sense of rightness. "She's beautiful," Alexander whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand. "She looks like you," Sarah said. "She looks like hope." Years passed. Sarah and Alexander traveled the world with their children, Elizabeth Rose, and later her brother James, and finally little Catherine. They had adventures and arguments, celebrations and sorrows, all the normal ups and downs of a life fully lived. Alexander learned to manage his protective instincts, channeling them into being a devoted father and husband rather than an anxious guardian. Sarah learned to trust in their love completely, never again doubting that they were meant to be together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they renewed their vows in the same rose garden where they'd first married. 10 years, Alexander said as they danced under the stars. Elizabeth and my great-grandfather only had 2. We're not them, we're us, and we chose differently. Do you think they know? Do you think they can see how it turned out? Sarah smiled, feeling completely, perfectly happy. I think they're at peace, finally. And us? We're just getting started. They danced until late in the night, surrounded by their children and friends, safe in the knowledge that they had broken the cycle that had trapped them for so long. Love had won over fear, once and for all. And in a mansion in London, surrounded by gardens full of white roses, 2 souls who had found each other across centuries finally got there forever. The curse was broken, the pattern was complete, and their love story, which had taken lifetimes to tell, was finally ready for its happily ever after. Don't forget to rate this story and subscribe if you want more love stories like this one.